In your top story this hour, the convention to kick off a national dialogue enters its second day in Pretoria today. President Ramaphosa officially launched the convention yesterday, saying he's hoping for it to serve as a platform for South Africans to be honest about their challenges. A framework will then be developed for how the dialogues will be conducted throughout the country over the next few months. Ramaphosa pointed to issues such as water shortages, inequality, and the safety of women as some of the most prevalent issues requiring attention. Women's rights activist Brenda Madumise says South Africans are in for a surprise. She's been facilitating one of the sessions at the National Convention. The first convention of the National Dialogue kicked off in Pretoria yesterday, with discussions taking place despite some organizations pulling out last week.
There's going to be a surprise that is coming for many of us of how we are going to shape these dialogues that are supposed to now go into communities, and even what might come out of this convention tomorrow, right? Because there are conversations that are happening. The challenge that I'm putting forth is, if it's citizen-led, it must be citizen-led from top down, right? You don't want anybody interposed between us and whoever. We are going to drive it, and we're going to drive it in such a way that it gives us the results of the dreams that we shared. That's about that.
Let's take you live to the UNISA main campus in Pretoria now, where that convention is sitting. Newzroom Africa's senior reporter Ziyanda Ngcobo joins us now live from there. Good morning, Ziyanda. If you could just give us a highlight of yesterday's outcomes, and also, as Brenda Madumise has indicated, that there will be some surprises today. How much do we know about what surprises are expected this morning?
Well, we'll still have to wait for her to make good on that promise, but certainly dialogue labs taking place, breakaway sessions in essence, where several discussions took place. So those earlier disruptions that we saw on stage are not deterring those, at least here at the UNISA campus. And we understand that by the end of today, a steering committee, which is meant to be leading the strategic priorities of what takes place next, will be formed. But there's still a lot of questions about the credibility of this entire process and how committed those who are here are to it. And on that note, let's bring in the National Convention spokesperson, Rev Zwoitwaho, to talk about this, because we saw that there were breakaways and we saw some of the disruptions playing out in front of the head of state. But some would argue that, well, when the cameras were switched off, there was work done. Your reflections, firstly, on the first day?
The first day went on very well. In my view, those disruptions were very minor, and they were actually handled well, peacefully, and the convention continued. They were quite unfortunate, but there was nothing lost because of those distractions in terms of the quality of the engagements which took place. So everything that was planned for yesterday happened. And in fact, we as the organizers were pleasantly surprised by the response of South Africans. South Africans are ready to dialogue, which means they would like to talk to each other. They want to listen to each other. They want to cross the frontiers, not just looking at their own interests, but also look at the interest of others. They would like to embark on one of the biggest nation-building and social cohesion project ever. And that train has taken off.
There are still lots of other civil society organizations that are criticizing you for, firstly, not including them in this process, but also the demographics, the representation, in other words, inclusivity of all kinds of demographics. I mean, one of the issues South Africa is bedeviled with is strained race relations and issues of national identity, which still, 30 years into our democracy remain a challenge. However, some would say that even the representation of delegates here is not reflective of the South Africa we live in. So in other words, how does this first national convention kickstart a process where it doesn't seem that everybody who needs to be in the room is there?
We have got a convention, and we've always said this convention is kickstarting the dialogue. We tried our best to get 33 sectors from society, and we have given an indication to the sectors that when they send in delegates, they need to ensure that their delegates are representative of the South African society. I want to accede that when you look at the people who attended yesterday, and maybe today also, I don't think we have met that particular objective. But the good thing is that these are not the dialogues. Where the dialogues are going to take place will be in communities. And I am very certain that they are going to be inclusive of all the sectors of South Africa. Now you speak about the race question. That is a big national agenda issue. And that is one of the issues that we need to be able to address during this dialogue. We can't just leave it.
Absolutely.
Why is it that when our forefathers had a dream of a united, non-racial South Africa, and we are still battling to be able to achieve that dream, it's actually upon us now. It's our opportunity to make sure that we address that aspiration of our forefathers for a better country that we live in.
But how do you do that, Rev, and this is the point about preparation, how do you do that if it seems that the various lobby groups who would need to be part of that discussion, like an AfriForum, a Solidarity, even a Democratic Alliance, which represent a particular constituency, some would say you have not done the groundwork beforehand. In fact, so much so that one political analyst even said that, well, there weren't even discussion documents that were distributed beforehand, before even arriving here to have those dialogue labs. So the legwork that would form the foundation for even the kick-starting of the national dialogues.
You see, you can't win this, because if you actually prepare all the discussion documents and come here and people will say, you are very prescriptive to the South African population. We want to make input into those discussion documents. And that was why we actually have this convention, to give South Africans an opportunity to actually craft their own future, to put content. So even the themes, the 9 themes that we were talking about yesterday, were quite indicative. South Africans can throw in any theme during the dialogue process that they are going to be able to talk about. And as for the groups that have stayed behind, the eminent persons group said they are going to make it their task to make sure that they actually engage with them. But I need to say that there has not been anything built by skeptics. We are into nation building, and nation building is not built by skeptics. In fact, anything is not built by people who stand on the sidelines and criticize. There are many, many groups in terms of, for instance, interracial social cohesion in the country. We have already started to do the work. In fact, we have even engaged with them to say, we are very, very happy that you are actually putting a stamp of the work that we are doing. And we would like to continue to engage and get into this train of the national dialogue so that we can actually reach out to even more people. So those are the heroes of our nation, not people who stand on the sidelines and offer no solution to the country that we are living in. We want to unite voices and shape our own country and the future, our own future and the future of our children.
Let's talk about the appointment of a steering committee, which we understand is going to also be dealing with sort of the day-to-day activities and guiding the strategic direction of these dialogues, some 13,000 that are meant to take place across the country. How is that going to be undertaken?
In fact, it's much more than 13,000. 13,000 are just word-based dialogues. You are going to have digital dialogues. You are going to have sector dialogues. The document which is going to be put before the convention in terms of the steering committee says that sectors, some of the major sectors, will come up with one person in terms of who's going to sit in the steering committee. The steering committee will then constitute itself, get a chair. But we do admit, as the conference organizing committee, that we might not emerge here with a steering committee. It will depend on the sectors. Some sectors have already given an indication that they might not be ready to actually agree on a person who's going to sit on the steering committee. They would like to have more consultations. They need to be given the space to be able to do that. But those sectors that are ready, of course, yes, we will be happy for them to be able to put up a name. But the steering committee is very, very important. And it should be representative of the sectors of the South African society. I always say I don't envy the steering committee, so they're taking up a task, but they won't be alone. The Eminent Persons Group has actually said they are ready to the task of steering this ship forward.
All right, Rev Zwoitwaho Nevhutalu is the spokesperson of this national convention that's taking place here in the capital. And undeterred by those who have decided not to form part of the discussions that were undertaken, questions around discussion documents saying, well, we won't be able to win then. If we'd come with discussion documents, we could have been criticized for having a top-down approach. So really maintaining the narrative that they want to hand this back to the citizens. But are the citizens satisfied with the process? That's still the question that many have on their minds this morning. Maschaba.